Have you started?
Yeah, I'm just.
No.
There's just a greater and growing recognition that the old sort of doctor knows best principle, that you make a decision that someone should have a particular treatment and you tell them that's what they've got to do, almost always doesn't work. And so right across medicine, but increasingly in mental health, we're aware that everything needs to be done in collaboration with the person you're working with. It's a collaborative, joint effort to achieve a goal that you both agree is an important goal for the individual.
I think one of the things is that it's not necessarily obvious. If you meet someone who's got a mental health condition, you might not be able to see it, whereas if someone has got a physical health condition, you might be able to tell quite easily by looking at them. If they actually look like everyone else, which obviously they are like everyone else, they might just have a few other challenges.
When we see somebody who seems a bit different, I think we're all a bit scared of that and we don't really know what to do. And I guess maybe we all need to, if we can, just be a bit more tolerant of difference. Walk This Way is a pilot study of an intervention to help people to be more active. So the idea behind it is we know that people who use mental health services tend to lead quite sedentary lifestyles.
Hello, Steve. Please come in. Bijou, in. Are you going to give me an introduction so I know what to say?
Absolutely, yeah. I've
Lovely.
got loads of questions to ask and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So-
Oh, look, you're up here now. He sees his big moments, Steve. There you are. Little darling.
I mean, how important is Bijou to...
How important? You hate me for saying this. He's more important to me than any human in my life. I couldn't function without this dog. He has kept me well this time because part of my illness has been depression. A big part of my illness is bipolar. It's a very common mental illness. And you either get highs or you get lows. And when I've come out of hospital this time, Bijou came home to me and he gave me a reason, Steve, to get up in the mornings. I just can't imagine life without him. The cuddly toys I've had for years, some of them, I collect cuddly toys. And those are some of the books that I bought myself over the years that I enjoyed reading. And can you see this here on the windowsill? That angel was part of my Christmas hamper. And this fellow I found in the street. He'd been abandoned at Christmas. And now he's got a new home with me. That's Barnaby. And Bijou shares my bedroom. And that's his bed, with his little paw marks on the blanket. This has been my home, would you believe, since 14. I'm now 56. And the only time I moved out of this home, when I got married, when I was 27. But we don't talk about that marriage because it was a bad marriage and it only lasted 18 months. No children. And I divorced him. And that's what I want to say about my marriage. Oh, you can see my allegiance to Arsenal. I used to hold posters in here with Arsenal. Arsene Wenger sent me that years ago. And this is very sensible what I found in the car factory. A house is not a home without a dog. I thought it was very appropriate.
When was your first illness?
I'm ashamed to tell you, I was 15.
Why ashamed?
Well, it seems like I don't know, ashamed isn't the word, but it seems that I've been, what's the word I'm looking for, dogged by this illness for many, many years. But I want you to know that I've had many years of being well as well and doing things, and I held down a job for 12 years. I know it sounds a funny thing to say, but the biggest disappointment to me, if I hadn't succumbed to bipolar and I'd been well mentally, I would have loved to have gone to university and got a good job. And I missed out on all that by having mental illness. The worst illness I had on 2 occasions was when I lost my father and when I lost my mother. And I just couldn't cope with either of them, losing either of them.
It's interesting to me that you feel ashamed of.
Well, it does seem it's not something I like talking about. So you're very honoured that I'm talking about it to you, because it's not something I tell people. It's not something I want to talk about, because you don't know how people are going to respond when you tell them. Anyone meeting me in the street doesn't know my background. I've been in hospital, I'm on medication, I've got this illness. Because to an outsider, you look like one of them, don't you? I'm worried that people will judge me and think, oh, look at her, she's in and out the loony bin, you know, because there's a lot of stigma attached to mental illness. What people don't realise, Steve, is that 1 in 4 in this country have some form of nervous breakdown in their lives. Those are the statistics now. Do you know he pined for my mum when she died? Pined for her. He used to go into her bedroom and just lie in her bed. He doesn't do that anymore. He's used to just being with me. You see that teddy on the end?
Oh, yes.
The dirty one. My mum made that in the Maudsley when they took her there with postnatal depression, and she wanted to make something for her baby, me. And this is Charlie the bear, and I've had him at home ever since she gave him to me as a baby, and I'm now 56, and she made him when I was just a few weeks old.
How do you feel when you think about it?
Well, I think it's a lovely thing that she did, but at the same time I think it's very sad that she ended up in a hospital when she'd just given birth. And they are not a general hospital, a psychiatric hospital, because they didn't understand in those days the depression mothers got after giving birth. Mental illness, you feel lonely. You feel that people don't understand you. That's the sad part.
Just thought you might be interested to see it. There's my son when he's about 10 months old with me. My son, quite suddenly, 20 years ago, became very ill with a severe mental illness. He went away for Christmas to spend it with his relatives. He was 20 at university. And left apparently well, as far as I could tell. Arrived in a very confused state. He was actually psychotic. And within about a month of that, he was actually in a psychiatric unit. He had schizophrenia.
Almost all of us will know someone through our families who have a severe mental health problem. So this stuff is incredibly prevalent. And we have allowed it to become, and I think the media's contributed to this, to produce scare stories, as it were, that these are very sort of risky, dangerous people, which is simply unfounded by the facts.
I often wonder how people generally get their information about schizophrenia apart from lurid stories they read in the press. Because if my son did something the opposite of a horrible crime, if he did something really brave, it wouldn't say that he had schizophrenia, because there would be no reason for giving his health status. And anyway, it wouldn't be proper. It's a very personal matter.
I think the word schizophrenia has become sort of shorthand for fear. There's often a fear of violence. So I think that there was a time that if anyone was killed by someone with schizophrenia, which happens very, very rarely, but when it did happen, it was given this huge headline. So that, I think, is a sense that people had. I guess I would say, and it sounds really kind of cliche, but, you know, they're just people.
I remember when schizophrenia was first mentioned, my son had actually heard the word as well. So I rang him up and I said, did you hear what the doctor said that you might have? And he said, yes. And he said, I'm very pleased. Which was a bit of a surprise. So I said, why are you so pleased? And I always remember his words. Then he said, well, at last I've got a hook to hang my hat on. At last I know I'm not alone, and at last I know it's not my fault.
We know that about 1/3 of the people with the most severe illnesses, given time, recover anyway. It just happens as part of the process. That's linked to this optimism. Actually, we're now much more optimistic about our ability for people with these problems to make a recovery. And the most recent development of that has been in the emergence of the recovery movement, which is basically starting from the viewpoint that hearing a voice, for example, doesn't mean you can't have a good life otherwise.
Carl.
Oh, thanks. That'll be a good film, wouldn't it? Squashed on camera.
No, that'd be scary.
Put it on YouTube, you get 100 million views.
Where would you be then if you went with the walking group?
I'd probably be at home just doing nothing, you know, and that's the good thing about the walk group. It gets us out, it's fresh air, meet people, interact with people like yourself, making videos, you know. It's all part of getting us like recovery. It's all part of the recovery. It's all part of getting us well again. It'd be so missed if it was to stop, you know. I think by all of us.
Has it helped you then?
Yeah, it's definitely helped me. It's made me more confident going out, definitely. And I've actually started new appointments now, getting out even more, doing other things. And before I did this, I just didn't want to leave the house. So it's definitely made me a lot more confident going out. It's made me want to be outside. I've even started going outside myself into parks and stuff like that, getting food, like what we do on the walk, and a cup of coffee and everything.
Feels to me very much like a little community.
Yeah, it is. And when new people come, we accept them in, and everyone just enjoys everyone's company. I'm a bit lost now. Run out of things to say.
Not at all.
Cut that bit out, I think.
That's so cute, isn't it? Look at that. Oh my god.
Oh,
That is cute.
He's going to say hello.
oh, bless you so
I love
Walk This Way is a 17-week intervention, and people have an education session which just really gives basics about why exercise is important, the benefits of walking, helping people to think about what some of the challenges might be and how they can overcome those.
Caught up with me.
Hi, Simone.
Hello, Steve.
So we're interested physically in a number of different things. In particular, we're giving people at the start some devices called accelerometers, and these are really devices that are worn on people's wrists, and they're very accurate measures of how much energy people are expending. If there are any benefits to the intervention and people are more active, is that maintained at 6 months after the intervention properly stops? Many of the medications can increase people's appetite and desire to eat more food. If we look at sort of doing more vigorous activities such as going to a gym, you know, I know from my own experience as well, is that going into a new environment and working out in a gym is anxiety provoking, and I don't have a diagnosis of schizophrenia, so you know I can imagine that if I did, that would be particularly challenging.
Get to the Catholic this way. You know, cheese and ham toasty.
Are you a fan of the cheese toasties?
Yeah, the cheese and ham toast. Mark got me on them. He used to have them all the time, and one day I thought, let me just try one of those. They look so tasty. And I tried it, and I thought, that's it. Every time we come out now, if they've got a cheese and ham toasty, that's what I get. I used to get a bit of cake, but I don't want to get diabetes, you know, so I've laid off the cake and I was on the cheese and ham toasties.
Simone was just talking to me about sort of, what do they call it, side effects of medication and stuff.
Yeah, and olanzapine, that's what I take. Diabetes is a side effect. It increases appetite, and the more you eat, and the blood sugars in it increases the blood sugar levels in your body. And if you get a bit of fat here and here, yeah, mine's definitely there. So I'm almost there. That's why I try not to eat as much sweet stuff as possible. But yeah, that is a side effect. Other than that, tiredness can be a bit, but I've been taking it for 7 years now, so I don't really get tired from it anymore. But yeah, the olanzapine is the diabetes that you've got to watch out for.
Can you tell us a little bit about where we are, Catherine?
We are in St James's Park. We haven't been up into central London much with the group, but we're here today, I think, just to appreciate some of the places tourists come to see. We're by the pelican pond in St James's Park with the rather unusual pelicans. Maybe we go around there and then round the back and then up.
They have coaching every 2 weeks with 2 of the occupational therapists at Sharp.
My mum said she'd seen a dog the other day, and that was a white dog as well, and she said the whole underbelly of the dog was all covered in mud.
Oh, no.
So she said it's almost like as if you'd drawn a line. An occupational therapist for me is someone who uses occupation as a therapeutic measure, so that can be occupation in whatever sense of the word that'll be. And I think for me personally it's very much about finding out what's important to the individual and help them to achieve their goals. So it's a lot about goal setting, but also setting goals which the client is likely to be able to achieve in order to get that sense of success, and then maybe be able to set bigger goals as well. So it's supporting people, and I think rather than doing things for someone, it's about doing stuff with people.
My exercise leggings.
Do you think we should all get some matching clothes to walk around?
You look nice in that.
I think you have to really get to know the person you work with and be allowed to get to know the person you're with, have enough contact time to build a therapeutic relationship, and then find out where they want the support, ideally. If you could, I would say, then you're working on their agenda. It's their life, essentially, and we're there to sort of support people to get the optimum out of their life and give people value within society when they're not in a working role. So that's quite important, I think, for the group we work with particularly.
In order to help people to success, they need to feel that they have some power and that they have some ability to do stuff. And I think sometimes people are maybe being told they can't do anything because of their difficulties that they're experiencing. And yeah, they might have a few more obstacles to overcome, but it's very important that we empower people to help them to achieve what they want to achieve in life.
The walking group, people are out walking with us, but it may be the only time they're spending any time with other individuals. They may spend most of the rest of the week on their own in a flat and maybe not have family members that they can sustain relationships with, so be very isolated.
A running duck.
So that bird with a red, was that moorhen or a coot?
I don't know, you probably know more about it than me.
The one with the white beaks, I think it's a moorhen.
Another thing that some of the people I work with say is very difficult is the way they view themselves and the way they see themselves, and actually low self-esteem seems to be a really big difficulty for people. And I think that kind of maybe loss of who you were before your diagnosis, what you were doing before your diagnosis, the way your diagnosis impacts what you feel like you can and can't do now.
If you think about what people talk about, it's quite hard to talk about your life if you don't go to work. You might not have a partner, you might not have children. So if you're not within that remit, it gets harder and harder because you feel like you're further from the norm, and then you can also judge yourself for that. So one of the benefits of the walking group is that people can talk about nature, seasons, other conversations crop up, and then from that we've talked about music and other interests people have, but we tend to have slightly different conversations, I think. We're not talking about mortgages and house ownership generally, and so it's broader in a way, and we can have some great unusual conversations from that as well. I think that's one of the merits of our group. It can go anywhere.
We went to see a play, didn't we?
Yeah. Was it good? No, it sucked.
Was it that bad?
No, it was good.
Did you know?
Great. Charlotte told me. She rang me up, I said I couldn't make it, so...
Yeah, no, it's all right.
We waited for about 4 hours at Sharpview.
Coming to somewhere where there's other people who might have some of the same experiences can be incredibly empowering and enriching to meet other people who might be having some of the same struggles as you.
Friendship-wise, yeah, I would say people have really built up friendships, and I suppose as a therapist it's allowing that to just be an organic relationship that people choose to meet when they want to.
So now tell me about this then, where we go?
I don't know, some Buddhist temple.
It's Chinese, you know, like the Shaolin Temple and all that, that's all Buddha. The Kung Fu people, quite good. Have you seen them perform? Sometimes they put them on telly and they rest, they've got a spear or a point, and they rest their stomach on it and completely put their weight on top of it and spin around and all sorts, yeah.
They play with swords as well, don't they?
Yeah, and the chain thing with the point on the end.
The writing, it's quite pretty, isn't it?
Yeah,
like Bruce Lee, isn't it, what he does?
Nunchuckers and all that. it gives you the feeling of starting all new again. When I first came, the first time park I went to was Dulwich, and I enjoyed it so much. And now when we find a new park or a new something to go to, it's like renewing it all over again. Gives you that, gives you a good feeling that you've something to look forward to.
I'm always in Stratton. Coming next week, then?
Yeah, I want to make sure I get to St James Park.
Really nice up there.
I think it's been going really well. I think we are starting to see people form friendships within the group and form a connection as a group, and that's been incredibly powerful to watch that. People who initially came to the group very quiet would, like, you might say hi and they might answer back with hi, are now starting to make conversation with people and start to kind of like bring up topics to discuss and ask someone a question. Even something like that, seeing that change in specific people within the group has been amazing to see.
But they give their time and they give their skill of listening to each other and they give each other support. So that group encompasses those elements of recovery and well-being that I think is really important.
Come with me.
How you doing?
Yeah, good.
You had a good week?
Yeah, very good.
Where did you get these cards from?
Talk about what they were handing out.
Christmas cards for everybody.
Is that something that happens every Christmas?
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that before we go out.
It's like good weather today, isn't it?
It's a bit colder, isn't it, this week, do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit cold, yeah.
So, Christmas, less than a week away now.
Sunday.
Who might you see over Christmas, do you think?
Probably people from the Mosaic.
Yeah.
Have Christmas there and then go back and have another Christmas party. So that'd be, yeah, it'd be good.
And what is the Mosaic?
It's people with mental health. Any problems, you see the staff there to see if they can sort it all out for you.
What about your family? Will you be seeing any of your family over Christmas?
I probably might do, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Last time we spoke, you were talking about how you don't get to see your kids anymore. I was just thinking how hard that must be.
I'm used to it. I'll just wait until they're ready to come and see me, then that'd be good, you know?
How old are they now?
My son's 25, my daughter's 22. Adults now. I might start a course soon.
What are you going to do?
Next year, gardening course. So, yeah, it should be alright.
Psychosis is a generic term for a whole bunch of different disorders. Many of these experiences are very common. So most people will have had the experience at some time of hearing their name called out when there was nobody there. Even more people will have gone into a room where there are a group of people sitting chatting, and they'll go in the room and everyone stops. And for a brief moment you have a frisson of why they all stop talking. That's an incredibly common experience that loads of people have. And what psychosis is, if you like, a magnification of that experience. Really what I'm looking for is that the person themselves feels they've made a sense of achievement. So it's not just about a treatment to reduce symptoms, it's a treatment to help people live their lives. I'm interested in mental illnesses not becoming a barrier to leading a full and ordinary, successful life as within constraints. Obviously, some people won't be able to manage everything because they're not able to manage everything, but that doesn't mean to say they shouldn't manage anything, which is often what happens, I think.
What park are we going to then?
St James's Park. It's up there. Not far. 5-10 minute walk. Yeah, I know my way round it, yeah. You do as well, innit? Yeah. There's some work up here.
Yeah. Tell me about that.
What, a job? I was doing a door nightclub. Security.
What was it like working on the door then?
It's alright, but it can be dangerous at times. If you're trying to throw someone out and they don't want to leave, then that's where the problem starts, you know. The reason why I left is I don't want to go for that Agri, you know. So I just changed jobs and became a labourer. That was the only job I had. 2 jobs in my lifetime.
So if you look at the employment front, people who've had a first break from psychosis and make a first episode of psychosis and then they make a reasonable recovery, very few of those folk go back to work or school. And you think why? Because they've had an illness, they've recovered, and clearly what's in the way is their own self-stigma, their own sort of self-doubt about their capacity, but also the doubt of people around them, whether they'll be able to work again or safe to work again. What we really want to do is we want to change the behaviour of everybody that has to deal with someone who has a mental health problem. And the way we can do that is by showing how successful and how ordinary people with mental health problems are. So, for example, why is it that we're having to put together a special walking group in Walk This Way for people who have a mental health problem when there are existing rambling associations and so on, many of whom will have people who have mental health problems and are just not mentioning it? And what's nice about the Walk This Way programme, nice about making a film like this, is it gives an opportunity to say to people, look, you are surrounded by people who have mental health problems and you just don't notice most of the time.
Do you reckon we're ready for a cup of tea? It's
Yeah.
quite chilly, isn't it?
Le vent nous portera, la caresse et la mitraille, ces feuilles qui nous tiraillent, le balai des autres jours, d'hier et de demain. Le vent nous portera, tout disparaîtra, mais le vent nous portera.
So when was the last time you saw your kids?
Many years. They've sent me letters and that, but I've never seen them face to face for many years. All I get from them is like a Christmas card.
Simone's just showing me a picture of her bijou. Let me zoom in on that. Beautiful.
The only time I don't see them, but I've had Christmas cards and letters from them.
So do you write to them as well?
Yeah, but I've never seen them face to face for a few years.
How old were they the last time you saw them?
17, 18. But all I get is just letters, that's it.
That can't be easy, mate.
And when they found out I had an illness, they blanked me for a little while. They're really angry. Then that day on, we split up and never seen them in years. What can you do? If they want me, they know where I am. That's one of the reasons why I became ill, drugs and family issues. One day I got a bit depressed, I thought cannabis was a good idea. So I tried it for a little while and it was it. Made me loopy. That's what got me ill. And so I started doing voices. I started doing voices because of cannabis, mate. I was on an ounce a week, puffing over and over again. When that's finished, roll another one. Just carry on doing it all the time, man. Crack up, mate.
Sometimes people think differently about things. Psychosis makes you see the world differently. You get different sensory feedback, and people sometimes have different ideas, whether it be conspiratorial or whether it just be that they get more intensely fixed on an idea and they can follow something through. So from that we also can get quite interesting conversations you wouldn't normally have. I think there's merits, to our group that are around the conversation as well. And although the focus of Walk This Way was on the fitness, the physical fitness, what we've found is it's the support networks in the group that people have made through having regular contacts with some space, because there's no expectation that people need to contact each other than just spend that regular time together.
So what do you think of my little bedroom?
Fantastic.
We are meeting people. There's regulars like myself, but there's always new people that come from time to time. And you're meeting people in the group that have had similar experiences to what I've had. They've had similar experiences. They've been in hospital. They're on medication. They're under the care of the community teams. And there's so much we can learn from one another. And we get on as a group. I think you find that, don't you, Steve? Absolutely. We do all get on, don't we?
Just end on an optimistic note that I think in, 30 years or something that I've been doing this game, things have got better. Treatments are better. Collaboration's better. The whole co-production thing has changed for many people the way they relate to their mental health professionals and how mental health professionals work to them, and that can only be a good thing.
Generally people are quite proud of being members of the group.
Yeah.
I am. I love that group, so
yeah, very
it's
enjoyable.
a nice afternoon, so I think that's what people come back for, really.
It is and it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think, in the mental health world, a lot of, the kind of therapy or the work you do with people is sitting down with them.
Yeah.
So actually just being on a walk and doing things differently is a very different experience, isn't it?
I think one of the things is about believing in people, believing that people can change, believing that people have got hope.
It's an amazing thing about human beings, but we do to some extent adapt. We adapt because we have to. You can't scream forever, can you?
We make our own destiny, friendships. But for some of us, psychosis kicked in when we were young, making our nature stranger to others, alienating us. Mine was schizophrenia, and to some extent, my voices were my friends, even though they were always nasty to me. I would count on them to be there when normal friendships went by the wayside. They took over. Now, with years of therapy, I've overcome adversities to let it all out in verse, poetry. So I'd say to anyone who's suffering, don't give up. Join us in the land of psychosis, for with anything you find strength in numbers.
My friend gave me this. I think it's very important. It says, friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they are always there. That's true, isn't it?